She says.
We're live.
Okay. I will go ahead and call, well, it's 6:06. We'll call to order the July 7th meeting of the Weld RE5J Board of Education to order. We'd take a moment to silence your cell phones. Rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Couldn't say indivisible. Indivisible. Ms. Diagana, would you please take a roll?
Monica Johnson is excused. Amanda Proctor. Here. Nate Sisano is excused. Amy Musgrave. Michael Wales.
Here. We do need to approve this evening's agenda. Are there any changes? Okay.
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Proctor, a second by Director Musgrave to approve the agenda. All those in favor? Aye. Oppose? We have an agenda. Do we have any citizen comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Might seem weird that I asked that, but if we have one that got emailed in, I just want to make sure addressing that. So.
Maybe there's a special guest waiting.
They could be. I mean, yeah, they're in the green room right now, right? We'll go on to our staff and student celebrations and recognitions. Superintendent Nielsen.
Thanks, President Ellis, board members. First of all, it's hard to believe we're back. New school year up and running, or getting ready to run. We talked when we were together in June that we would have some track celebrations with us this week as we worked with the high school. They're all tied up in their own sports tonight, making a recommendation that we may want to celebrate it when school gets up and going. So we'll keep that on the radar and make sure we get those individuals in front of you. I was out today doing a walk at MMS, and I got to see what's in the backyard. I got to see the hole in the backyard. It looks quite different than it looked in the past, so that was pretty neat. I'll text you all a picture.
RMS?
At RMS, yeah. Is that what I said?
You said MMS.
Oh, sorry.
So I thought you were looking at me
RS,
second for a minute.
no.
Yeah. It's like, which hole are we talking about?
At RMS, thanks, Amanda.
Okay.
Thank you. And it's coming along super well. I didn't tour most of the building, but I wanted to see where that was going as they started the work on that particular location just before the 4th of July. So that's going well. It completely changes the backyard. It's fascinating how different
Oh, I bet.
it looks back there. So I'll send you a panel picture when I have a chance. I also did have a chance. We were out yesterday walking MMS to look at some of the upgrades that we will need to make or think we need to make as we move that building to a 3.5 in a year, a little over a year. And I'm just walking through the facilities right now. As they do the deep clean, the work our custodians are doing right now is awesome. And the floor there, we walked in, and it's roped off. It had just been waxed, and it looked amazing. So and I heard that from Eric today when I ran into him. He's like, you got to go over and see the MMS floors. I was there yesterday. So just to thank you for a willingness. We've got a group of individuals right now that are taking a lot of pride in our buildings, and that's super cool to see that they're busting it. And we've got a positive leader. Our facilities department, I think right now they're cranking. I mean, this is the time of the year where a facilities department should be doing a ton of work in schools, and right now ours is. So that's pretty exciting. If you've been on Facebook recently, you've seen a transition, if you will, we've done a lot of work with Gregory and Associates for, I think, 4, 5, 6 years. We have moved away formally from them doing all of our social media, and we are excitingly using Marketing by Jay, which actually is a former Roosevelt student, a graduate you just shook hands with 2 months ago, and her company. And they're going to run with our social media, and they're doing a good job. And what they've engaged with, or the promise they have for us, is to continue the engagement, to grow our social media footprint, not just for adults, try to maintain with adults, but really try to also engage with our students in a little different way than we have historically done. And so we're excited about that, but also excited that we're doing that with somebody that is homegrown, someone that has gone through our schools. And so watch for that. I think one of their first posts was acknowledging that work with them, and we're excited. I think Tammy and Jessica had an awesome meeting with the two of them last week, and we're really energized by the energy she brings and that team brings. So that's something we'll monitor, but I wanted you to know that's up and going. We did have our team that joined or that went to DC for the Schools to Watch celebration, and we're honored there at the end of June. Otherwise, I think just ramping up and maybe that's a good place for me to stop, but I'll put all the rest of what I have in my superintendent report.
On the social media marketing, is the new company just managing the district channel or the schools and the district channel?
Right now, just the districts, I think, but what they're really working to do is get their hands around what our schools are doing also, so that they're in tune with each other. Right now, our schools are managed by the schools, and so we don't want to infiltrate that, but we want to enhance that. So if Pioneer Ridge is pushing something out, Marketing by Jay is going to try to enhance that and also post, and they're going to work on the same. I think we've got a lot to learn about how do we think as a system in terms of our social media, so that it's not just a Pioneer Ridge message, it's a district message in some sense. So I think we've got some work to do in that area, but Marketing by Jay is really going to take over the district channels. I think that's how I say that.
Sounds right.
But one of the things we need to do more with is our we don't do anything with Instagram, really. We have an Instagram. We don't use it much. And I think one of the things that Malia pointed out very quickly to us was, if you're going to engage with the student group, you have to go where the students are, and they're not on Facebook. And so we're excited about that. I think I said this when we were talking initially about doing some work with Malia, is her commitment to paying it forward. She wants to bring in more Roosevelt students to have the same or similar experience that she had working for the downtown business development.
Yeah.
And that's pretty exciting too, that she's thinking about the cycle of it. That's a good place for me to stop, I think.
Okay. Any questions? Well, let's head into our board reports, board member reports. Do you guys have anything?
I need to look at my calendar. I can't remember.
I
what
know,
I've done
I always have
last
to go back
month.
to my calendar and see, oh yeah, we did that.
Scott, while I'm crumpling my way through my board report, when is the next RMS tour for the board? Can you please remind me?
Yeah, I think it's at the end of this month. Maybe it's on the 2nd. Can't remember. The 2nd will be the Friday. That's Friday the 26th.
Friday the 26th. I don't know if I've done anything school district related.
Did you attend the taxing district's lunch and learn yesterday?
Ooh, I did not. That sounds exciting though. Was it? Oh, I'm sad I missed it.
Well, you'll get to hear a little bit about it, I think, coming up later.
Is RMS tour at 7 or 8?
7:30.
Thank you. I'll put it in my calendar so I don't forget. So I can see the whole.
It's pretty neat to see the flooring going in and the 6th grade wing, and it's startling how close we really are. It's hard to think that because you so often think about summer and where you are. You're either ready to open in 6 weeks or you're ready to open in 13 months, but right now we're ready to turn the building over in 3 months, I think, 3.5 months, so it's gonna go quick.
Yeah. I'm like you guys, I don't have a whole lot. I gave a tour yesterday at RHS. And it's so funny, I was thinking about it, like, we're now, a good year into it, and it's still like overwhelming to do the tours. I mean, it was a 2.5 hour tour,
Oh, jeez.
and there were things that we didn't see, just because they were like, I'm a little overwhelmed with everything I'm seeing. And it's awesome. I mean, it's so, right? I went home and I was thinking, God, we talked about so many things and so many opportunities. And just having that conversation with, and it was with the Sauer family. It was, they really hadn't had a chance to get back in the building after having toured it prior to students being in it. So, but we had so many fun conversations about opportunities, and I mean, you just see the pride that they had in knowing that they made the right decision in donating that land to the district, and that it's going to be used well. But yeah, again, they'd ask questions about, well, what about this type of program? Oh no, we're doing that. And well, what about AP stuff? Oh yeah, we're doing, it was so nice to be able to say, yes, we're covering all these bases that we should be covering. Plus, so I will say the custodians were working super hard in that building, and what you were saying about being over at MMS, it's obvious that they are taking pride that we might not have had the last few years anyways. I'm going to email you guys a pretty interesting PowerPoint. I serve on the planning commission for the county, and 2 weeks ago we had our luncheon with the demographer. And so we got to see the demographer's report for Weld County. They put it together specifically for Weld County. And it was really interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of interesting things in there, but one thing I thought was striking is they said that the growth in Colorado right now is less than what it was in the 90s.
Oh, interesting.
And, everybody in the room was like, what? How could that possibly be? And she said, 95% of the growth right now is occurring right here.
Yeah.
In the 90s, it was more spread across the state.
Yeah.
She said, but yeah, 95% of it is occurring on the I-25 corridor. They're projecting declines in population growth everywhere but Larimer and Weld County for the next 20 years. And a lot of that is going to be migratory inside the state, so intrastate migration from Denver, Boulder, flooding into Weld and Larimer County. So I know, right? That's kind of the sound I made when she said that. It's like, oh. Yeah. So, but I'll share that presentation with you guys because they just gave it to us this morning. I haven't had a chance to even unpack it, but.
How often does the Weld County Planning Commission engage with their demographer?
So we use the state's demographer.
Okay, use the state's demographer, like that demography office or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How often do you guys specifically engage with them? Is it like once a year or?
Well, as far as the planning department, I'm sure they're continually in conversation. They bring this report to us. Right now, it seems like it's been every 2 years. COVID kind of threw some things off, but it's usually every 2 years. I think it takes them a while to collect all that data and crunch it down. But it's fascinating stuff. I mean, you wouldn't think it would be, but it really is, just how people move across the state and how, I mean, I was right. Everybody who lives in Greeley works in Loveland, and everybody who works in Greeley. If you drive on Highway 34, you pretty much know that. But yeah, they solidified that belief for me. That's how that happens. But yeah, I'll get that out to you. I did send an email to you guys yesterday or today, I can't remember now, about a possible retreat for the board. Just thinking about how we might be able to do that. We haven't done it for a couple years. We have in the past, we've just done it in this room, which makes it nice. So you can come 5 minutes after brushing your teeth and don't have to worry about getting all fancied up, and just go home. Don't have to worry about trying to find a place. But if we can, think about days that might work for you. I know everybody's got varying work schedules now. We all seem to have a plethora of options when it comes to work schedules with this group. But if we can find something, even if it's a half a day, and then obviously things that we want to talk about.
Yeah, I think I can make a Saturday probably work full or half day. A full day, probably have to hire, what are those people called?
Facilitator?
Thank you, a facilitator, probably to walk us through a full day because you just get exhausted doing it. But
Yeah.
half a day we could probably couple with a few deep items and do that.
Yeah, and we have always used a facilitator in the past. The problem is we've never really we've never brought the facilitator anything that we wanted to specifically work on, and so then the facilitator kind of like
weird, yeah.
guides us down a path they think we should be going down, and I'm not really a big fan of that.
Yeah, no, I agree coming with like an objective or an intention.
Yeah.
I could probably make a Saturday work or during the weeks just work.
Yeah, no, I understand that for you guys. So, well, think about it. Let me know. Obviously, Monica and Nate are vacationing. They're not thinking about any of this stuff, so we still have a little time. That is all I've got. You're good? Okay. We will move on to the report from the superintendent's office.
So I've just got a couple things. Tonight, first, I want to just say that just like we did last year, we're going to kick things off next week with a retreat, a leadership retreat. We'll have all of our principals, APs. This year, it's pretty exciting because I think we've got data that we can start to dig into. There looks to be quite a bit of celebration as it keeps rolling out. I also just want to let the board know that we have plans this year. Last year, we didn't do a great job of talking about how we did with the board. So I think there's a little more intention this year as we ramp up the year of how are we ready both to get going with the year, but then how do we do? So thinking about that model, we'll be doing some of that work next week. Things I wanted also to share is we had talked when we were together last time about bringing that plethora of policies back to the board, I think for the third reading and to give us a thumbs up on them today. CASB has sent out updates and we got an update today on the update. So we haven't had a chance to look at how the policies that we were going to bring, we had the one set to bring back. But with the updates, we would like to take and make sure what we bring to you is CASB's latest, so we're not updating a policy and then coming back with a revision. There is some revisions in what they've updated to what we put in place around Title IX. So in some sense, letting us digest and maybe letting CASB digest. I think they're getting quite a bit of feedback about the policies as we speak. And so I think that's where the revisions are coming from. So we will bring those back to you probably in some kind of form that makes sense when we see that they're ready to roll. None of them are time sensitive, so we have some time, but rather than doing a policy only to bring it back to have you look at it a second time. So that's why they're not on there tonight. And then the last one is, there's been a little chatter around Ledford in the community. And so I wanted just to talk about from our lens, what are we seeing from Ledford? Things are still moving forward. I think this week they're putting in a sprinkler system, which is really our final step, right? We said we'd put in a sprinkler system. When the sprinkler system goes in, they will seed, and then it'll pretty much be in the position that where we're ready to hand it over. There continues to be work legal to legal teams because that property was, a school was put on it a million years ago or a long time ago. And so there's been some work on,
Well, there was a landholding corporation
yeah,
that was formed by three partners, Ledford, Parrish, Callahan. And their names are listed on title as a partial owner of the parcel. They're all dead, and they've been dead for 60 years. And so now we're playing the game of, I think both the towns and our attorneys are playing let's find descendants and see if this is even if there's somebody who has a legitimate claim to this land holding corporation. But that's where the title holdup is.
so they're still working through that. So on our end, Sampson is doing some work. One of the questions that has come up is about the equipment. I think there's still chatter out there that we still have asbestos to take out. The asbestos is all gone.
Okay.
The equipment's there for, as Josh called it, and some of you will know what it means, I didn't. Equipment is up there to grub the land, and which is essentially taking the footprint of the building. They'll go through and dig it up and make sure it's all the stuff is, any cement or whatever that's still there is gone, and then they'll get rid of the weeds, put the water in and seed the place. So that's what's happening. As I said, the sprinkler system's set to go in this week, and then the electricity should be turned back on, which we've got to have there to run the sprinkler system, but otherwise, that's what we should see over the next, weeks. Michael, am I missing anything that you've heard?
No, I believe that's it. Just had the site survey done this past week, so I mean we're slowly moving forward to get it handed off.
So that's, if any questions pop up for any of you, you also can send them to us. We'll work with any individuals that are wondering, but I know there's been some chatter.
So we're still obligated to maintain that? I'm new here. I didn't realize we were still obligated to maintain that. I thought we already handed it over.
No, we haven't handed it over yet,
Oh, okay.
and the handoff is not as easy as we
I've gathered
It's-
that.
yeah, it's-
somehow
Okay.
thought.
It's harder to tear a building down than
Yeah.
takes longer to tear a
Okay.
building down than it does to build a building.
So we're still maintaining the entirety of that.
We are still working on it, yes. I mean, Sampson's helping us because Sampson's still working on the project. So they're the ones dealing with the weeds. They're the ones that have come in and knocked the weeds down. Our facilities did some work one time, I think, when we had heard the weeds on the outside of the fence weren't great. But we weren't gonna take our equipment inside the fence because it hadn't been grubbed. I didn't know that was called grubbed at the time, but, so we asked Sampson to go in and knock things down in there, and so jointly, I think we're still moving that forward. But it has been interesting to see how hard it is to give a piece of property. We're still working on the firehouse.
Oh, yeah, that thing's nightmare
By
too.
MMS, that thing is close now, but we had issues with title there, right? Where the title was not in this district's name, it was in the district's name from 60 years ago, and so there was, because none of that work was done when things moved forward, and that building's been there for 100 years, probably, I think.
Yeah, well, probably not that long, but
Mid-60s, isn't it? That's what the
The
flag says.
firehouse,
Oh, the firehouse.
the firehouse we're handing off.
yeah, that would have been, I mean,
It was there before, or at least it was zoned before we were well to RE.
yeah, it would have been when it was Milliken High School was there, so.
Fun.
So all of that, Amy, for me, is like you, it's been interesting to learn how hard it is to give something away, really, is what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to hand something off, and it's not super simple.
No,
So, but that's the Ledford side. I think things are still moving forward, and Sampson's still finishing up. I think the equipment should be gone fairly soon, and hopefully it's seed that we actually see green stuff come up. So that's it for me, I think, tonight.
okay.
There's some questions for
Yeah.
you.
So I know in the next 30 days, there's a slew of events and things that are happening. I just don't lose sight of them. There's like the I don't know if they call it, the first, this big staff meeting where you have everybody and you're like, rah, rah, like that meeting is happening. Are we still doing Beef and Bean Day?
Beef and Bean Day, it's interesting to think about that, because last year you asked about Beef and Bean Day, and I didn't know I was right, so that was, so, yes, we will be a part of Beef and Bean Day. That information will get out to you. We'll have at least a bus in the parade, and I think we were just talking today about what the theme will be after the bus dressed up like a spaceship. I think they feel like they've got to do something with the bus now. So it's 100 years of Beef and Bean Day, or 100 years of Milliken. I don't know.
We could do a curd wagon.
It was 100 years. So we'll be in the parade, and we'll be at the whatever you call it, fairgrounds or festival or whatever. So we'll be present in both.
Are we doing the kickoff to school event with families as well?
The Unite to Ignite thing.
It's our launch.
Our
Our launch.
Our.
Oh,
Our.
ah,
And it's August 17th. We'll get that to you.
Okay, is there anything else I'm missing besides those three things? Those are the only three things I could think of. I just
Those are the three biggies. And the R launch is something we're tackling from the district office now, so it's part of what we'll be working on next week at the retreat, right, is how does that all look? And I think we wrestled with, do we go the week ahead of Beef and Bean Day and do something before school starts? Do we go the first weekend after school's up and running, which would be the week after Beef and Bean Day, then we don't step on Beef and Bean Day's toes at all? Felt like that was a good celebration of the district after you've actually been on your campus for a couple of days. So that's what and we'll do that at the high school. And there'll be lots of similarities to what happened in the past, which for me, gathering, because I wasn't part of any of that. But,
and that's, I'm sorry, what was the date? 10 to
August 17th.
17th, okay.
It's from 10 to 1 at the high school.
Are you gonna send it out?
I'm sitting
Thank
on
you.
Yeah,
that.
they're actually
Perfect.
I just got the potential for social media today. So we're close.
And the last question I have, I thought I had before, is like the schools sometimes do things, and sometimes they ask board members to come, like MES does popsicle pop in or something like that. Are the schools doing similar type things? And if they are, will you just send them out? Just so we can be aware, if I can stop in on stuff.
Be careful what you wish for.
I just want to know. I'd rather know than not know, right? Like,
You want to know when there's treats though, right?
I definitely want to know that.
I'm okay either way.
Jessica updated Nate and I's calendars for all our agenda setting meetings, and literally was looking at my calendar, like, okay, looks my inbox actually, everything is fine here. Wynn did something else, came back, and I had like 56 new emails, and they were all calendar invites to these meetings. Like, what is going on?
Luckily, those are easy ones.
Yeah, those were
It
super.
wasn't 56 people you had to reply
I know.
to.
At first, I was like, oh my God, what just happened?
Then I got 56 times 4 replies.
Oh, yeah, that's probably true, yeah. Any other questions? I want to back up real quick. One thing I forgot to mention, I did reach out to the chair at KCUA, and I will reach out to the chair the co-chairs at KQA. I did invite them to be a part of any training that we might do, like we had done in the past. Again, if we can get that into our schedule, and they were excited to be included in that. So I will reach out to KQA's chairs too and make sure that invitation is extended to them as well. So.
President Wills, can I add one more thing too?
Sure.
It's a good reminder for me. We were involved, both Assistant Superintendent Kramer and I, in the culminating part of their new leader. They brought their finalists, asked Tammy and I to be a part of. It really was just an interview with Tammy and I, and wanted us to take a look. And then so we met with a couple finalists. We met with Stephanie and Jessica on the backside of that. And they listened to the interview, so they got to listen and record and get a sense of how we do things. They ended up offering a gentleman named John Steckel, who I've known for a while. He's been around in northern Colorado and has had jobs in St. Vrain and at Ames. He's got interesting experience, so I'm excited to. He wanted to reach out, a great conversation before he accepted. And so again, I look forward to, as we talked last year, I think a district should have a good partnership with their charters.
Yeah.
I think Stephanie's asking for that, and they have shown a willingness to come to the table, and I think our board did the same last year, and I look forward to that continuing to be in our future, right, is to have a relationship with Civica that looks much like KQA's. KQA's been around a long time, so I think you start to understand, and you understand how to navigate, and I think that's in front of us, right, is to continue to have a solid relationship.
Yeah.
That we're providing good alternatives for kids. And I think John he'll be a nice addition to that staff over there. I think he's been in several different leadership roles, so he brings some seasoning to that building.
Well, good. Okay. Let's head on over to the CFO's report.
Thank you, President Wales, members of the Board of Education, and Superintendent Nielsen. Excuse me. Tonight, I'd like to just give you a brief update on where the district stands, kind of as of, June 30th, as of right now. At year end, there are, the numbers that we have right now are definitely going to change because there's going to be audit adjustments. One thing that I would like to highlight, the fourth bullet point down, our July certified staff accrual will bring our expenditure budget spending to about 95%. How accounting work is that our certified staff contracts run from August through July. And so our upcoming July payroll for our certified staff will basically be booked back into the 23-24 school year. So, that will, increase our expenditures by around 5%, which is, expected and anticipated. All of our schools are generally within the expected range for their budgets for the month. Some, outliers are MMS, and they're in the process of purchasing equipment for RMS school. So they have a spending spike. And then also RHS has some large charges to irrigate the school's grounds, which, don't happen every month of the year. So that's why we see a spike with RHS. And if we go to the next slide, this just kind of shows where our schools are for the current month and then year to date. So if we go to the next slide, district departments, they expended 99.26% of their monthly budget in June. There were some departments that were that also had spending spikes. For the administration building, that's where our leave payouts for unused leave for the 23-24 school year get charged to. So there's a spike. There was a spike there. Improvement of instruction. There was a spike there, and that was just as a result of the district deciding not to continue with the CO MTSS grant. So the expenditures that were charged to that grant were moved into improvement of instruction. So you see a spike there. Student support services, end of year billings for contractors and out of district placement schools. We saw a spike there. And with facilities and maintenance, the new custodial department is included within facilities and maintenance. And so, there's a spike there with, the additional staffing, the additional, equipment purchases, supply purchases, those types of things. So year to date, district departments expended about 82.4% of their expenditure budget. We go to the next slide. Other funds, most of the district's funds are at the level of spending you would expect. One outlier was the Student Activities Fund, and that's just the result of year-end activities that the students did. So we saw a spike in expenditures there, as you'd really expect this time of year. And then this just shows the funds, the current month spending and their year-to-date spending. And one other thing that I would like to, as President Wales alluded to, was the Weld County Assessors lunch and learn that they had yesterday. And kind of, there was a lot, there's a lot going on in property tax, the property tax realm in Colorado at this point. There's a lot of changes. There's 2 ballot initiatives. So things are definitely not static in that arena. For our district in particular, I was actually a little surprised by this. Our assessed valuation went down. Well, okay. So what we have is the preliminary assessed valuation from the county assessor. At this point, they're still going through appeals processes for individuals and businesses' tax bills. So this is very preliminary. But at this point in time, the district's assessed valuation has gone down about 9.5%. Our oil and gas has gone down 14.5%, which is actually less than what I was anticipating. What that kind of demonstrates that it's only going down that much is that there was a lot of additional drilling within our boundaries to kind of keep that value from falling as quickly as other districts had. I was sitting in between the Eaton School District, Windsor School District, and their assessed valuation for oil and gas, had gone down between 20 and 30%. So I was surprised that ours is holding up as it is. So that concludes CFO report. I can answer any questions the board might have.
I don't have any, but would you be willing to share that one sheet with us?
Oh, absolutely.
That shows the breakdown in the district, what the assessed values are in the district?
Yes, I absolutely can.
When does that appeals process for the homeowners and the businesses end? Like, when do we have concrete numbers?
So how it works, so, we have this, preliminary numbers in July. Then we get kind of an official preliminary estimate in, it's August 25th is when we'll receive that. And then even that is still going to be more preliminary than it has been in the past, just because the state legislature changed the timeline of the appeals process. So in years past, the appeals were essentially done by the August 25th deadline. There's still going to be appeals going on during that time. So that'll definitely give us a better idea of where we're going to wind up. But then it's due, the county assessors, the final assessed valuation numbers are due to the districts by December 10th. We typically get those by the end of November from both of our counties.
We made that fun, didn't we?
Well, they're due to us by December 10th, and then we have to turn it around. The board has to approve it, and we have to turn it back around to the counties by December 15th. So if everyone plays out their time, it's a very, very tight time frame for us.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by motion. Most of the items listed under the consent agenda have gone through board review and recommendation. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure a extensive and thorough review. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda by the request of a board member. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
We approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Director Musgrave, a second by Director Proctor to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? We have a consent agenda. I never printed out this big, so it takes me a minute to find it all. All right, we'll move on to our special business. Our first item is the adult meal price update for 24-25, and that's who are we kicking that to? Everest?
Everest, take that one.
Thank you again, President Wales. As part of compliance with the National School Lunch Program, the district needs to basically ensure that the National School Lunch Program isn't subsidizing adult meal prices or paid meal prices. And so there's a calculation that our Mrs. Macha, our Director of Student Nutrition, goes through to make sure that we're in compliance. And from time to time, we need to raise prices. And that's the case this year for our adult lunch prices. Adult breakfast prices don't need to change. So as you can see on the slide, we currently have $2.40 for breakfast, $3.70 for lunch. We need the breakfast stays the same. We will need to raise our lunch prices to $4.85 for the coming year. If we go to the next slide, this is just a screenshot of the actual form that is filled out to do the calculation for it, to make sure that we're in balance with our pricing. And if the board would choose not to raise the prices, then the district's general fund would need to essentially pay the price increases $1.05. For every adult meal, the district's general fund would need to pay $1.05 into the food service fund to reimburse it for that. Would be what would happen if we decided not to raise the prices this time. So going to the last slide, requested board action. District administration is requesting Board of Education to raise adult lunch price from $3.80 to $4.85 to remain in compliance with the National School Lunch Program. This concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions the board may have.
And so this will be any staff, parents,
Any non-student.
any non-student, board members who are.
Board members, yep.
It's a pretty good deal though, still.
It's still a good deal.
Okay, any other questions?
Trick question,
Uh-oh.
not a trick question, probably a question you need to know, like, how many adult meals did we serve last year?
I will need to look at it.
I was just curious, like, trying to weigh out the cost, like, if we did have the general fund subsidize it, how much would it be? Because I hear it says estimated 2,000, but
Yeah,
I feel
that's,
like it would be more with
Um,
teachers and staff, because it's so convenient to eat at the cafeteria.
I would think it would be more as well, but I can definitely get that number for you, Director Proctor.
I don't know, I think there's a lot of staff though, especially with the way the elementary schools and the way Roosevelt's set up now. I think it's easier to bring your lunch and have it
In the
Than to
fridge.
eat.
in the fridge, yeah.
I haven't had an elementary kid in a minute. Do they still have the days where they invite families in to eat? lunch with their kids in the area.
Like the
Is it
Thanksgiving
Thanksgiving?
meal, they'll invite, everybody to bring their families in, but there's not a specific one that you're talking about.
Okay.
Maybe it used to be. It's kind of hard to accommodate that many people.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess $4.85 is still a deal, but McDonald's also has like that $5 menu or something. So I just want to make sure it's,
It's a French fry and
it's still
Chicken
reachable
nugget.
for parents of kids who are, or for families who are struggling with all, so that they can take part
okay, well, we do need to take, we should take action. We don't,
It would be nice.
it'd be nice to take action on it. Let's take action on it.
All right. I'll move to increase the adult lunch price to $4.85 as presented, $4.85.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Director Proctor, a second by Director Musgrave to increase the adult meal price to $4.85 as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Diagana, would you please pull the board?
Amanda Proctor?
Yes.
Amy Musgrave? Yes. Michael Wales?
Yes. Our next item is the joint use agreement with TRPR for the gymnasium at Elwell.
Thanks, President Wales. I think the next three items really are discussion, but I think our intention is to bring the board up to speed with some of the asks we will have as we move into August. This first one, I think the district has been working back and forth with TRPR around. We stepped into an agreement as a district, 3 years ago, when we were building Elwell, around TRPR giving us a lump sum of money. Or over time, money. The TRPR district is going to pay us $750,000 over a 20-year period of time. We've gone back and forth. We really haven't gone back and forth. Clint and I worked to get this pretty solid. His board is in a good spot with what you see in front of you. I think we have wrestled as a district with how this fits with a bigger IGA. And even in conversations we've had with board members around how do we codify, if you will, new gyms that are coming on, and how do we partner with TRPR and continue to enhance that. So where we've landed, we think this is the right agreement for the specific use, because we have so much money attached to the gym, that we have this called out separately, and that we'll continue to work on a separate IGA that we haven't had active since 2019 with TRPR, but it's in motion right now and continues to do work. Ultimately, that I think would be a good group for us to get together, our board with their board, as we move into the fall, thinking about what's out in front of us, but to understand what they're looking at doing in terms of expanding options for our community, and how can we support that, since we have some of the best spaces in the community. What role can we play in that, and how does that live with the IGA? One of the things I think, as you read this IGA, there's a specific section that talks about the transition of money, which is really what this one is about. This is about the transition of money, but it also spells out when are they essentially first on the Elwell gym, and when are they second? And I think that was the ultimate agreement that was made in years past, right? It's awkward to say TRPR owns the gym, because we do, but they paid this lump sum of money, so they have first right, if you will, when it's not ours. And so we spell that out in here, and that is going to be different than how we spell out time usage in the other IGAs. So essentially, that's why we wanted to put this in front of you. We will ask this be signed August 7th, which will allow for money to start flowing from them to us. To this point, Elwell's been open 2 years, and we've had nothing from TRPR to us as this has been worked on. So right now, as soon as this is signed, there's a $75,000 payment for those first 2 years come to the district, which I think Mr. Everest would appreciate. And then $37,500 every year after that, I think is what would happen once this is put in place. So with that, I'll stop talking and answer questions if there are any.
Can you take me further back in history on this? Because I think I've heard snippets, but not the whole story. So when Elwell was being envisioned, we were going to have a gym, because all the schools have gyms, is my understanding. And then TRPR talked to someone and said, hey, we want to use a gym space. So we elevated that Elwell gym space to accommodate TRPR's requests. Is that correct?
Essentially, yes. They, you know, the standard gym that Elwell was going to get, TRPR and the district came to an agreement where we would basically enhance that by $750,000.
Was that the differential between the
Between the
standard gym and what they were asking for in this space?
Yeah, they want like additional storage space and, you know, just additional floor space and in the gym. So that added up to $750,000 increase in the project. So
Which occurred, and this occurred after the award of the BEST grant. So that complicated things as well, because
So it wasn't
We kinda had to
included
go
as a
back-
reimbursable item.
right, we had to kind of come back to BEST and say, this project's bigger, but this is covered and will be paid by BEST, and it will be paid by our bond.
Does that help? Is that enough, Amanda?
Yeah, it helps me understand the history. I think the thing when I first read the IGA that I think I'm still struggling with, and maybe, you know, or Clint has an idea, but if the difference between a standard gym and the elevated expanded gym is $750,000 paid over a 20-year period, I don't have a problem with those terms. But what is not stated in the IGA necessarily is all of this equipment isn't going to last 20 years. Those scoreboards aren't going to last 20 years. And so the wear and tear and just natural degradation of the space is silent, which means it would fall onto the owner of the property, which
Yeah.
is yes.
Well,
I
and
think that's a little concerning.
and it's not 20 years. This is a 50-year.
Well, the payment periods are 20.
20, yep.
And in it talks about how do we re-up it.
The
We also can
uses,
get out of it. I do think one of the things we try to do to address what you are talking about, Amanda, there were some challenges I had with this agreement. First of all, for me, paying $750,000 over 20 years is not paying $750,000.
Yeah, it's discounted.
So it's discounted a great deal. So in essence, we're as a district, based on the way that agreement was made, we're paying some share of the $50,000, right? I mean, even though they'll give us that amount of money, it will be worth less. So that's what we stepped into, right? Or what I stepped into when I took over. Part of the reason we wanted to land on when it's theirs and when it's ours is that did allow us, and you see it spelled out in here, is percentages. The gym is ours first and percentages is theirs. And the rationale for that was, that's how we would split up betterment. So when we go back to do scoreboard or bleachers or floor, it will be, and I can't remember what the percentages are, Michael.
it's around 25%, I believe.
Is what their portion would be. That was one of the first conversations we had with Clint was, this is not gonna last 50 years. And so how do we make sure that's true? And that's true before the 20 years is up. Well, some of it we'll have to repair before the 20 years is up, so.
Can you point me to the section of the agreement that talks about that percentage of betterments? I'm really like, I'm into contracts. They're kind of
Yep,
my exciting thing because I really believe a good contract benefits both entities. And I also believe a good negotiation leaves people a little unsatisfied as well. So like, I know we're not going to get everything. I understand that. But I just want to make sure what you're verbally telling me is included in this document. Because it
Both is-
also protects the rec district as well. And like, we're both serving similar populations of youth. And I love the synergy between the two of us. So I'm not trying to luck. I just want to make sure, like, my job in this seat today is to ensure the school district is protected in this agreement.
Right.
And as a citizen, when I go listen to TRPR, I'm like, yeah, let's do it, right? But in this hat, I need to protect it.
Totally. So when you get down, it talks about both the school district and rec district are wholly responsible to their remediate fund replacement. All
Seeing
damages
it.
or vandalism that occurred during the respective use of the facility.
What section are you in?
8.
Okay.
In the event the facility is damaged by the use of the rec district, the school district shall send an invoice, so that would be theirs, taking care of it.
I'm just reading this different than you're verbally telling me, is I think what I'm trying
Yeah,
to point out, is that what you're verbally telling me sounds really cool, but it doesn't read that way.
Yep,
This reads as like, somebody got mad and they shattered one of those glass doors.
right,
And we're like, okay, we gotta go fix this, you know? But the betterments, like asset betterments, to me aren't addressed in this agreement.
I think that, yeah, that's,
Um,
go ahead, Mike.
If I may, I believe, so this is the version that Clint, Mr. Dudley signed, and, gave back to us. We have since, there's been another exchange of IGA, where what Superintendent Nielsen talks about has been put in. So I thought, this is actually
So this is an older
version.
version?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, I'll take a step back and let you do this.
But I think that's a good one when we look at this, bring this August 7th, make sure, because that was a big one for us, I think, was to make sure. I felt like as we stepped into this, we already were in the position where the 750, the agreement had been made, district to them around how that would be, that's uncomfortable. But how do we take care of the other pieces was important and was why we had to spell out how much was used by each party. Not necessarily how much was used, but when was it ours and when was it theirs? So you actually could get to the percentage of that, so. Any other questions?
So the updated one, you guys are gonna email that to us? And then the stuff like the insurance and all of that, is that all? Is this document here, is this one accurate, or are there updates to everything, like?
The primary update is what Superintendent Nielsen talked about, which was the percentage, breakdown between the use from the district and from TRPR, and then that cost sharing, for maintenance and improvements.
Okay. Yeah.
So I've dug my heels in on this quite a bit, and it's this termination piece, and I don't know what a good answer is for this. In initially reading through all of this, my first response is that the use piece needs to be in a separate MOU, or the repayment term is fine. I'm fine with the 20 years, and I'm fine with that that agreement being 20 years. I get a little queasy about a 50-year contract, only because, and solely for the reasons that we previously discussed in the meeting today about this issue that we're having at Ledford with this title, and the same with the issue at MMS with the firehouse piece, is that 50 years is a long time to forget about. Did we have an agreement? Did we not have an agreement? Was there a contract? Is there a contract? I wanted to have something that was 5 years, that it had to go to both boards to be re-ratified or reapproved every 5 years. Only for the sake of bringing it back onto the radar of both districts, so that they know, yes, we are in an active agreement. And that kind of led to another discussion. I don't want to go too deep into this, but one of the things that Superintendent Nielsen and I have talked about is kind of in and finding out where all we have IGAs, and being sure that we set some sort of pacing that on an annual basis we review every IGA we have, and we make it a habit so that every board from here on out reviews every IGA we have, so we don't get in these situations where we're like, oh, we have to keep that swimming pool for the rest of the time immortal. Like,
Can I ask a reporting question on that? So the rec district is a Title 32 district. I not understand their rules very well. They have to disclose to the state on an annual basis every single IGA they have, period. So like the rec district is should be maintaining their list of IGAs and reporting it to the Department of Local Affairs. What I am unsure of is particularly the title that the statutory title the school district falls under, if the school district also has similar reporting requirements to the Department of Local Affairs, that you have to report your IGAs on an annual basis. That I'm unsure of, because that would be a quick and dirty way, because if like Title 32s, you have to have every IGA listed that you have and a vague notion of what it is. You don't have the terms, it's just a list. So the rec district, this should be on their list, but for us, I don't know that answer under our particular title section or not.
I don't know.
I have never heard of any requirement like that. That doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't exist.
For school districts.
and I would say, based on conversations I've had over the past 6 years about, do we have an IGA? That no, we don't have to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could be erroneously reporting your IGAs.
Sure.
I've seen plenty of local government entities not know they have an IGA and never report it to the Department of Affairs. That's a possibility. I just don't know if the school district does, because I know cities are supposed to as well. So I don't know.
I think the conversation I've had with President Wales is there's logic in us trying to get in some kind of rotation for the board to know, but more for staff to know, so we know we're operating the way we're supposed to operate. So I think that piece makes a lot of sense. This one interesting to work on, because you feel like, for me, I'll just say for me, I feel like I'm working on a handshake agreement that happened before I took over, and trying to get to terms that I felt like were comfortable for us. I'm less uncomfortable with the 50-year because there's a way out of it. And adding a 5-year revisit is an easy one, I think. And probably the other, the piece I've talked to Michael about is as we build the other IGA that talks about all the other spaces we have, Nelson Farm, which we get great access to, and that's been a huge asset for us. And it's free for us in perpetuity. But as I took over last year, there was this talk about TRPR starting to charge us or wanting to charge us for Nelson Farms. And so, at least for me, I had to do some digging to understand when it was donated, and part of the donation was the school district should have access in perpetuity. So that's longer than 50 years, right? So that But how do we start to think about all these spaces? We're gonna bring on 2 new gymnasiums that TRPR may have access to. And we're gonna have an elementary school that has 2 gymnasiums, so there's a lot of space that we can jointly use.
Right.
Those all feel different to me than the gym we have that they paid $750,000 for. That's where I've been stuck, is this other agreement. We've got to figure out how do those all work, and those are different than a gymnasium they paid $750,000 for. And so it feels to me like they're 2 separate places, at least while they're paying us money. But even after that, they're going to be responsible for upkeep there as long as this goes. Where they're not responsible for upkeep in the gym spaces they rent from us, they just pay us a little bit of money to use it. So these 2 things, they're parallel, but they have felt to me like they belong parallel to each other. So the conversation tonight for me is great. I would love for you all to digest things. We'll get you the other, the updated one of these. We'll also get you what we have in motion for the other IGA. Because that one, and we're meeting with Clint. I think I have another meeting with Clint next couple of weeks to talk about the ongoing. And we'll take this one across the finish line when we're ready to. I mean, whenever you're ready to do it, recognizing that whenever we do, it brings in a little bit of money for the district. So,
Right.
Does that seem fair?
50 years though is, I don't know, it just seems absurd, but
It's a long time.
it's a long time because everything changes very rapidly.
It is a long time. I think TRPR likes their longer agreements because like before it became theirs, it was
Yeah.
like this really long agreement with the town of
Mhm.
Milliken too.
I think everybody likes a longer agreement.
Mm-hmm. That helps, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that it's wise though.
And I,
Especially with something like a gymnasium where you're definitely gonna see change and needs that come up.
This feels to me, and again, I'm talking about having been the person sitting trying to help work through this, right? It feels more like a 20-year than a 50-year. We can get out of this at any point, but we're locked in some sense, to the payments of the $750,000
right.
over the first 20 years.
And that's where for me, that's where it's weird, because I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that piece. And it kind of goes to what you're saying, is that it makes sense to have this IGA that spells out what our use agreement is for all these other spaces, which is great, because we need to have that, especially the Nelson Park Farm, we need to have that in writing, because that got lost. That already got lost. And that facility is not that old. And so in transition between our leadership, their leadership, the boards, that got lost. And so that's where I struggle with this. But I can appreciate what you're saying, is that our use agreement with this is contingent on them paying us $750,000. And so it does need to be treated differently somehow.
I also think, and this is playing both sides of it, right? Wanting to represent the district for sure, but also wanting to honor wherever this agreement was made, right? 50 years was put in the ether before I started working on this, right? That was talked about at some point that there would be this would be TRPR's.
Right.
And 50-year, ironically, I mean, you could have said until the building comes down. In some sense, they built it, and as long as they're paying, if we were to do a 5-year rotation and update it, it's a 50-year agreement with a revisit of terms every 5 years. Maybe that's the way we do it, and maybe that gets us more comfortable. I'm comfortable because I think TRPR or us could step out of it. It's ironic, they can't step out of the paying for it, right? So if they were going to step out of it, I don't, because it's taken them so long to pay for it, right? They
Right.
didn't give us $750,000, which there's mixed information out there about the original agreement. Was it always set up to be 20 years? Or when they had another opportunity, did they then move back with wherever the handshake was being made and said, we don't have it now, so we'd like to pay it over 20 years? I'm not sure, and I don't think either one of us know the actual truth of
Yeah,
that.
and we won't. I mean,
So,
that is in the wind, as they say.
Yeah, I was surprised that it was over 20 years. So when I first
Yeah.
heard about it.
Yeah, and that was the surprise when that came, because the board at that time was operating under the impression that that was not going to be the way it was. And I'll say, I don't have a problem with 5 years or 50 years. If they can use it for 50 years, that's great. I just want to make sure that we have some stops in there where we can say, hey, look, you guys, for whatever reason, this isn't working out. We'd like to separate from this. But more importantly than that is that we know that's like I keep saying, my thing is remember the future. That the board from 10 years from now, the board from 15 years from now, the board 45 years from now knows that they have an agreement with TRPR to do this. So, Darren squats the toad.
yeah, so action for me, I feel like we'll get you an updated one of these so you can see it. We'll get you where the IGA is in motion. It's not ready, but you can ask questions on that one too. And then we'll try to figure out between now and August 7th whether we're ready to say yes on the updated version of this. The feedback you've given me, I'll represent with Clint when I see him in the next couple of weeks. Does that sound all right?
Any other questions? Comments, concerns?
One more question.
Yeah.
If Clinton signed it, did his board already approve it?
His board already approved it. His board approved it before it came back to us.
The version you sent us?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the signature's in there, right? And we've had some challenges since, so I went back to him afterwards and,
So has this board reapproved anyone?
no.
That was kind of that was kind of the comical piece about that, was that we sent that hoping that there might be a little back and forth, and they're like, no, here it is, it's signed. It's like, wait, what? We're really ready for that.
I mean, of course
All right. Ready for the next one? This is for the item C, discussion of the preliminary financing.
Again, this is informational for discussion. Mr. Everest and I have been working on how do we do two projects that we see in front of us that are going to need some financial backing to do. One of those is the playground at PRE, and one of them is the remodel of MMS to open in '25. So Michael Everest has put together an idea that we think is a solid one for us to pull this off in the playground relatively quickly. And the MMS remodel to have that building ready to go fall of '25. I'll turn it over to Michael.
Thank you, Superintendent Nielsen. As Superintendent Nielsen, mentioned, you're exploring ways to finance the remodel of Milliken Middle School, to convert it into an intermediate elementary, and also the replacement of the playground at Pioneer Ridge Elementary. I did approach to kind of get some information about certificates of participation. That type of financing vehicle really doesn't make financial sense until you get around the $5 million mark. It doesn't really become economically feasible until you reach that point. The district is currently working with First National Bank of Omaha, the district's primary bank, on this financing project. We're looking at, roughly 1.5 million for the MMS remodel and around 1 million for the PRE playground. We are, there's different types of loans that the district could get. One option would be as a type of construction loan where, we would have a maximum borrowing amount. We would do draws for the construction. So we would only borrow as much as the projects actually took. So, for example, kind of another item that the board will be looking at tonight is IGA with Johnstown for support of the PRE playgrounds. So that, that would reduce that $1 million number down, so we wouldn't have to borrow the full $1 million for that particular project, for example. Currently, we're looking at between 4.5% to 5% annual interest rate for this type of loan. Process should take around 60 days from beginning to end for us. Go to the next slide. So this is, make that a little bigger, Mrs. Giordano. There we go. That's a little better.
How's that, Michael? Too big?
That's a little too big. Well, maybe back it off one. Yeah, there we go. So this is for the MMS remodel. So $1.5 million, 5% APR. If we have a loan over 10 years, that's a $194,000 annual payment that the district would need to make for this loan for 10 years. Right now, the interest rate is somewhat speculative, with the talk of the Federal Reserve, at some point reducing interest rates. So that would directly impact this for us if they do that before we obtain this loan. If we move to the second slide.
Is that not it, Michael? Oh, sorry. It's just
I'm sorry,
moving
the next slide.
It's just moving the thing around. Sorry about that.
And so then for Pioneer Ridge, this is, at $1 million, 5% APR over 10 years. We'd be looking at a payment of about $129,000 each year for that. And I believe that is the last slide. So this is my presentation, and I can answer any questions the board may have.
Michael, could you talk a little bit, before we take questions, about what you're thinking about how cash in lieu lays with the potential of these payments?
So Superintendent Nielsen and I have been going back and forth about this. I think definitely the Milliken Middle School remodel would be a prime candidate for the use of cash and loans to finance this. We're actually, with the Milliken Middle School remodel, we're actually adding educational seats to the district. So we're expanding the number of students the district can serve. The playground at PRE, we might need some guidance on that. I can definitely understand the arguments for it. I can definitely understand the arguments against it.
So with that, do you have the balances on those accounts?
So with, so currently we have around $800,000 in cash in lieu between Milliken and between the Milliken account and the Johnstown account, or well, really the shared account. Milliken's is separate. The the original account is shared between Johnstown and Milliken. So, you know, definitely, and we, you know, we got around $600,000 in cash in lieu in 23-24. So at least right now, I mean, that's definitely a funding source that could sustain, you know, these payments throughout. It just kind of depends, you know, when the development stops, those cash in lieu payments stop. So in 23-24, we did have those apartment complexes in Johnstown close to I-25. That was a significant chunk of the cash in lieu money that we got for last year. So, you know, there's additional apartment buildings in the works. So,
So the project at MMS would satisfy the terms of our IGA with the town of Milliken, because it is expanding educational seating and spaces.
so with that, I mean, we could definitely use the Milliken cash in lieu money, which is it's between 50 and 60,000. There has a lot of development in Milliken since the new agreement was reached. But yeah, that would definitely satisfy the Milliken requirements. The shared account requirements are
Capital
less
construction.
stringent.
Right, it's basically capital construction.
Yeah, essentially. Capital construction, yeah, I mean, we did get into some trouble with Milliken on kind of a loose definition of that in the past.
Right. No, I mean, and that's fair, and that's, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
I think that's why the conversation Michael and I have been having, right, is how do we look at that as certainly I'm going to say the joint one, although just philosophically, I don't believe there's a joint one, and I know we have an agreement right now with Milliken, but it's ours, right? When cash in lieu comes to the district, it's the school districts. It's not the cities to tell us what to do it.
Yeah.
The board gets to make a decision on what's best for this district with those dollars to help us enhance the seats that we're creating. Certainly the Milliken Middle School, we are enhancing the number of seats.
Yeah.
So for us to take a look at how would we do that, I think that does offset, and it's offset with money that can't go into a raise for teachers, for instance.
Right.
So I think that's important, but it also doesn't drain the cash in lieu all in one year, which allows us to have other projects that may come up that we have to do. So that's the reason I think we looked at ways to deal with something like this. I also, just to be fully transparent, Michael has looked at this as a 10-year option. We talk about things at MMS, we're really talking about, I mean, there's going to be some cosmetic things we have to do that if we end up changing the building there at some point, the cosmetic stuff goes away. The paint, we lose. We looked yesterday at some of the carpet needs, or some places we need to put a new carpet. That you likely lose. But the furniture, any of those things that we purchase, we would be purchasing assuming they're going to a new building when a new building is built. So in some sense, you're front loading what you would have to bond for down the road. And whatever we would have left of these, whenever we were to go for a new bond, this could get absorbed by the bond. So both of those things, the playground and or the updating or building a new building, let's assume we were to build a new elementary school in place of where the middle school is. Much of the furniture you have in the current one would go over. So the bond could repay this whenever that was passed. So is that a fair way to say that,
Yes.
Michael?
No, yeah, I agree with that, so.
So this is just kind of just an overview of, kind of what the financing, kind of could look like at this point in time.
We haven't looked into any grant opportunities. I'm thinking of like MES, we got that East Health grant to help with that playground.
We haven't really looked at any grant opportunities for the MMS building at this point.
Does that mean Pioneer Ridge you have looked and didn't find any?
Yes.
Well, with Pioneer Ridge, we got, the potential IGA with Johnstown to help support
Right, but you
some of
haven't
that, but
looked
we
at
haven't
any
looked at any grants specifically.
Well, I think there has been some, yeah. And that's why we really wanted to kind of keep this as a discussion item tonight. Nate has been really active in that piece. He's worked with Josh on identifying some grant opportunities. I know they've talked with some folks at the Weld Trust about, is a possibility there. They did look into GOCO, but GOCO has kind of changed what they're doing when it comes to playgrounds. So yeah, I know they're looking at stuff, and so I didn't want us to do any decisions on this until he could be here and talk a little bit more about the things he's looking at, so.
The other piece I would like to call attention to, the second document you have in there though, is the town came forward. They had their retreat recently. And they had some money that they looked at, how do they want to allocate it? And I think there was some advocates there for supporting the playground. And they have offered, or written an IGA to offer us $100,000 to help us with the playground. And you can see the terms they have stipulated, and one of which is they would like a match of at least $100,000. And they would like the match of $100,000 not to be from grants. That doesn't mean the other rest couldn't be, but the $100,000, they like to be from
The district,
from some of the same kind of sources theirs would be coming from, is the way it's in there. But you can see that, again, that's them bringing $100,000 to the table, which I think is, when we sat with them last year about this time, I think, I don't think I walked out that day thinking it would be more than 10%. And I also would tell the board that I think as we move forward with the projects at PRE, there's some hesitation that we have as staff here, because we are going to bring a playground at the MMS site so that can be used as an elementary school. And we need to be thoughtful about how that looks when we put in a new playground at PRE. So we've got to be transparent about those two things. Obviously, the sites, the playgrounds we put in at Elwell and at MES are very nice playgrounds, particularly the one that went in with the new build at Elwell with what's called pour and play. And when you do that, the stuff is there permanently, right? I mean, it's, we wouldn't be looking at a pour and play at MMS because we're going to have to put it where potentially there would be a building at some point in time. So we've looked at, is there even playground equipment we can use and then reuse, so that we're trying to be economical with what we're doing if in fact we were to reuse that space differently in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. But there's a political element to putting a playground here and putting a playground all in at PRE. So there's still work I think that we need to do around what is the right price tag for what's going in at PRE. So I think that's work ahead of us. But again, I think Michael has been, in thinking about it as $1 million, that's the price tag we've heard since, I don't know, the last couple of years, I think. And so looking at the bids and potentially having a rebid is, I think, in front of us. We can't do any of that though until we know where the funding's coming from. So I think that's why we'll bring that back to us in August 7th meeting.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our final special item, special business item. That's the Roosevelt Parkway Roundabout.
Well, it's the evening of IGAs. So this is another one, we're in conversation. The town has been talking about potentially working with the entities at Roosevelt Parkway in Colorado around how do they chat. I think since we opened a year ago, they've been trying to look at how do we make that better. Initially, I think there was conversation about putting the stoplight in there. They have determined a roundabout is the best way to do it. We as a district right now would be responsible for whatever goes in there at about 25%, not about, at 25%. Will be 25% of it. The Sours would be 25% of it, and then the granary would be 50% of what goes in there. The town right now they are working hard, pedaling hard to try to get some grants. They have a belief, I think, of potentially bringing in upwards of $1 million in support for that, which would lessen our cost. We are going back and forth with an agreement. I think Michael and I have a meeting next week with a couple representatives from the town, Granary, and the Sours, for us all to get in the same room and try to understand what some of these expectations are. We have, at this point, let our legal team take a first stab at that and then send it back to them with some of what we think needs to be tweaked. The timing for them is, if they can move this forward, is they would like to get the designs done and have the designs, us pay for the designs by about March. And they are targeting, if all things work out, to start the roundabout work the day after graduation and be done by the start of school next summer. So that's work that's in process. They're building. The proposal for them, as I understand it, would be, it's a roundabout that's set up for that, Colorado, to be a 4-lane road, which is designed to be at some point 2 lanes going each way. And the design talking about right now would be even a 3rd turn lane. So if you think about some of the roundabouts you see where they almost have 2 turn lanes into the school, that's my understanding, right, is it would be set up to be 2 lanes either way with yet a 3rd turn lane off of Colorado under Roosevelt, which from a safety standpoint for our kids, I think is going to be a huge improvement of Roosevelt. It would mean all summer next year, the only way in and out of Roosevelt would be that north road. But in the end, I think traffic, once that's done, would be a whole lot smoother. So again, this first time we've had a chance to try it as a group of 3, but something that we could be bringing back to the board for approval as soon as the 7th. Likely there'll be some communication, if the 7th is a decision, some communication for us to talk about it one-on-one or 2-on-1 prior to the 7th, once we have some agreement. Because I do believe once we have some idea in the IGA that there may be some expedition or some expectation from the city to move so they can get started, right? They got to have us all on board, and once they do, they can start that for grants, do that work. The total price tag probably will be about $600,000 with, if they were able to pull in $1 million. Otherwise, it's about 8.25, something like that. So it's a hefty price tag. But again,
Does that include design and construction?
Yeah, that's all of the costs of both.
That would be our cost.
That would be our cost.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be our cost.
Okay.
That's a quarter. That's 25% of the
Okay,
project.
that's like,
Yeah, it's a big price tag. And
that's actually, I mean, it's actually less than what I thought it would be, for the
I was
truth,
just gonna ask you how much that, if you,
for the size
at
it is.
Weld County just approved that another roundabout by Eaton, how much that one cost. That might give us a good idea of how much it would cost, but if they already have ideas, that's fine.
they're talking about 3.4.
I believe so. so.
I mean, I would have.
3.4 for the whole thing, and they're, again, whatever, they keep tossing around, I've heard from Matt, Michael's heard from Jason, they think there's a reachable $1 million that would support this kind of project. That would come off the top, and then it's 2.4 divided by 4, so.
It doesn't seem hideous. Not as bad as I thought.
I would have thought 5 on the bottom.
It actually sounds like they're gonna do it right. I like the
Yeah.
extra lane here for turning as well.
Yeah, I was pleased. I initially thinking about a stoplight. Stoplights are, I mean, they're just huge headaches when you're talking about lots of traffic, no traffic, lots of traffic, no traffic. Roundabout really keeps things moving. So, and it's much safer for kids. When you think about when things happen in a roundabout, it's much slower and it's generally not a normal T-bone, so.
Right.
So for kids, I mean, I'm excited about, that's a big improvement for us. And when Colorado becomes a 4-lane road, which I don't know how many more years that'll be, is it 2, is it 5, is it 10, but it's coming. And that'll be a big deal for high school kids to be turning across 2 lanes of traffic when that happens. That'll create another, so the roundabout in ahead of that will be awesome. So it's, I mean, that is positioning us forward, and it's just town doing the same. So, any more questions on that?
I have a question regarding the payment of that. If we're looking at potentially financing $2 million playgrounds, let's just pretend. Is there enough cash reserves to pay that? I know that joint account, not adding seats, it is capital infrastructure for that high school. But I don't need the answer today. I think we do need to think about how to pay for that, especially when we have conversations during negotiations about teacher salaries and dipping into reserves. Then we have these massive capital projects. They're not massive in terms of life, but for us, they are.
Yeah, budgetarily, they are.
Yeah, the school district runs really close to margin all the time. So I just want to make sure that we have enough margins. And I don't need the answer. I just need you to kind of think through like draining everything and what that looks like. It's what it is between the 3 projects.
Yeah. Well, and I believe, talking with Superintendent Nielsen, that the roundabout would also be a potential cash in lieu.
I don't disagree.
Project. That's definitely, in my mind, at least right now, that's definitely closer to it. So, the MMS renovation, that's dead on, really, adding seats. This is really just kind of the continuation of building the new Roosevelt. So, yes.
But I think the question's a valid one, right? As we continue to position ourselves as a district, how do we make sure that we're able to do some of the things that are going to come up?
Yeah, I think we've been lucky with our property tax revenue in the last couple of years with teacher salary increases in the property tax revenues, particularly oil and gas, being able to help kind of that gap. But that's definitely feels like a fleeting temporary moment when you have larger capital projects in front of you, of being able to negotiate higher teacher salaries like that when you have infrastructure needs.
We'll definitely need to keep those 2 things separate, or well, not necessarily separate, but one feeds into the other.
They feed into each other.
All right, any other questions? Well, thank you guys for that. We'll be revisiting all these soon. We have no new business. Do we have any citizen comments on general topics? All right. We don't have any need for an executive session. Is there anything other that you would like to discuss? When you get home and in time to watch Murder, She Wrote.
Perfect.